Robert, welcome to Adulting with Autism.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, for all my listeners new to Robert, who are you and what do you do?
So I'm living over in Ireland, and I'm a psychotherapist. So my training is originally is in traditional psychotherapy, and then I decided to branch out into specializing in neurodivergence. So I have a private practice that I operate in Ireland and then online as well. And my private practice is a sensory room where I do a lot of therapy in there and only for neurodivergent people. So there's no more others because there's plenty of need, as you know. So that's what I do. I specialize in neurodivergence and in psychotherapy.
You're going to get a bunch of my listeners say, I need a passport and I need to go move to Ireland.
I know, isn't it awful? It's awful. So it's even like I have clients from all over the world, and then people travel from all over Ireland, and of course it's a nice thing, but it's also quite sad because trying to find somebody who is divergent and who specialises in divergence, it's not common, as you know, and most of us search and search and search, and we go through therapy after therapy, um, and sometimes it doesn't work.
So, your master's research looked at why ADHD often goes unnoticed in adults. So, what are key reasons adults get missed or misdiagnosed? Because that's a big thing that it's either missed or misdiagnosed.
Completely. How many people do you know that will say that story? And in therapy, it's a story I hear constantly. So it's all very similar stuff. If we take, for example, we take a therapy, for example, uh, most of us go to therapy. A lot of us go undiagnosed into therapy, and nobody goes in to say, I'm autistic or I have ADHD. We arrive for other reasons. And that's how I went to therapy for years and years and years. And yeah, I've combined type at quite a high level. So you'll see all my hyperactivity movements. I was like that in the therapy room. And I was constantly shifting and moving. And nobody ever suggested at any point, could this be ADHD? Because the presentation was anxiety. The presentation wasn't typical because I have a job and I have a wife and I have a home, and that doesn't match ADHD. ADHDers don't do this, and that's how ridiculous it's viewed upon. Um, and so obviously masking then is a really big part of it. And if you don't fit the sometimes ridiculous criteria, we miss so much then. And so it's all that hidden missed opportunities. I'm hoping that psychologists, doctors across the world in Ireland definitely we're all kind of everybody's training a bit, but it's not good enough. So you have professionals that constantly miss what are actually really, really obvious presentations of divergence.
So, I know a lot of my listeners are labeled like young, where they're lazy, disorganized, or they're dramatic. How do you explain adult ADHD in a way that makes sense of those patterns without like making them a whole pathology?
It's really that lazy comes up all the time. Oh, I am lazy, and then why are you so lazy? If we just take lazy and for adults, ADHD adults are not lazy. We're extraordinarily hard workers, trying to mask and all the things that we have to cope with during the day. Um, if somebody is sitting still, unable to move, wants to do something, can't get up, and then the phone comes out and someone walks in and they're like, you have all this to do, and there you are scrolling. And so that presentation is there's a lazy person. We internalize all those statements over time, right from the beginning, that there might be laziness attached to this. This system gets extraordinarily overwhelmed. The nervous system takes in a huge amount of information, huge amount of trauma as well, unfortunately, throughout our lives. So when it comes to something like "I need to," that statement alone can make our brain freeze. And this is the fight or flight freeze response. So it's a proper freeze response, hits the nervous system. And this puts us in to a frozen position where we'll procrastinate because we're chronically overwhelmed for lots of different reasons and through life. And unfortunately, at times as well, and I know for me, I catastrophize. So I go to worst case, this is going to be huge. I will never get this done. And then, but that only took 5 minutes. It wasn't that bad. As in, these repeated cycles always happen. But it is very much like the laziness bit alone. That's a lifetime in the making. And we have to be really kind to understand that that's not a decision that we're consciously making. This is being driven by the subconscious. And these are the areas that affect neurodivergent people.
So, what are common misdiagnoses or like the partial ones? Like, I know anxiety, depression, a lot of personality disorders that you see in like ADHD and autistic adults.
It's really sad how many people have been missed. Um, Anxiety is probably one of, and depression, but anxiety disorders. If you, I do a lot of training courses to the likes of therapists, psychologists, or anybody who listen. And for psychologists and for psychotherapists, I always ask if you see someone with a presentation of high anxiety, go deeper, and particularly if they're women, because the presentation of inattentive ADHD, the ADHD, so I combine the big hyperactivity on the outside, and then my brain runs enormously fast. That's inattentive ADHD, an internalized hyperactivity. That hyperactivity can have no movement on the outside. So if you have an internalized system, it can be quite hyperactive, hard to deal with. That could produce depressed states. It could produce a huge amount of anxiety. And for women in particular, a higher anxiety is unfortunately totally missed in women. And the presentation, doctors are quite bad with this too, and they make all sorts of terrible suggestions, and sometimes they can put people on the wrong medication. Um, Anxiety is probably one of the main reasons why people come into therapy. Is I have extraordinarily high anxiety. I don't know what to do. And if you go with like typical CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy for anxiety, it's really good stuff. It works, but it doesn't fully work for divergent people because it has to be altered and changed to suit our brain. It has to become more visual, less language, explained in a deeper way. So anxiety in particular, and in women, is the presentation that people miss the most because at that point, most of us don't even know that we're different and that we are divergent and it might be ADHD. So we don't suggest it and nobody else suggests it either.
So, masking is like a survival strategy for us neurodivergents. Like, what are the psychological costs you see from long term masking?
Very serious. Without getting too serious because we keep it, but it's yeah, it's extraordinarily serious. Right up to unfortunately the very very serious and unfortunate, self harm, suicidal ideation, and sometimes into completion of suicide. Unfortunately, which is far too common amongst autistic and ADHDers. So to explain masking, we got to go back to the beginning. Written on our DNA is that we have that change in our prefrontal cortex. We are divergent from the beginning. From the beginning, we have behaviors. And you're seeing more of mine. I'm in a more unmasked position. I've got my fidget. I'm allowing myself to move. Um, that's unmasking. Masking is a thing that we do from the very beginning. And from the very beginning, we're told, stop that. Don't do that. Sit still. You can't do that. And we get totally bombarded to not go with our DNA, what we were born to do, and go against it. And when we mask those and we pretend, okay, I could sit still, we get rewarded. Well done, you're sitting still. That's the beginning of masking. And then as we go through life, that continues and it completely tears down the nervous system. And unfortunately, that internalized system that we're talking about from the very beginning and at the age of development, we are talking about trauma now. Um, So we're talking about a traumatized nervous system, a person with the real trauma. No, I've lost my phone trauma. This is the real deal stuff. And so we camouflage, we pretend, just like we've been told to. Unfortunately, as it goes on and the longer it goes on, the harder it is to mask. It's very, very difficult and exhausting over time. And that's where you really start to see big, big mental health problems, depression, anxiety, total overwhelm, burnout, uh, way lower self esteem. And the mask is complicated because it's there from the very beginning. And most of us sometimes don't realize what we're actually masking or what it is. For people who are starting to look at the mask, it's all us. It's not different personalities where because it can often produce one of the big effects actually in therapy is people arriving thinking they might have multiple personalities. So, like a schizophrenia type personality or a complete loss of identity because I don't know who I am anymore. Um, I'm this way in front of this person, and then I do this with these people. And so, loss of identity and identity crisis can be one of the features also.
So you also frequently speak about rejection sensitive dysphoria, which I just learned about. How do you describe RSD to clients who just think they're overreacting all the time?
For anyone who's new to this, please look it up. Rejection sensitive dysphoria is, I think, for me, the hardest part of divergence. When you start to learn it, you start to read and learn how big this thing is. So the statistic that often sits with me is the one where the average ADHDer gets directly insulted 20,000 times before the age of 12. In terms of what that does to the brain and to the body, we are talking about an enormous amount of trauma. So ADHD is not a stable condition. It can be influenced by trauma. Even though it's written on the DNA, it can be influenced. And all that, uh, do what you're told, sit still, you can't do that. Any ADHDers out there and with autism and the mix of ADHD will know all those statements. So that mix of trauma and you fast forward to later on, and the part of the brain that controls the ability to control emotions sometimes, it's not there. That mix means that our brains go searching and they go searching, unfortunately, for criticism that is actual or perceived. And so what we have then is walking towards conversations and trying to see where the brain is trying to figure out where all the danger lies all the time. It knows it's people. And so we see the threat levels. The brain sees the threat in people. So what that means, we're walking towards people and we're trying to figure out what we're going to say, what the person might say. And what we're trying to do is to make sure that whatever we say does not come across as something that could be criticized or rejected. In a conversation, we're watching. We're watching the people, the reactions, the things I say. Oh, why did I say that? Will I say this now? Will I not say this now? That person did laugh. So it's exhausting. And I'm walking away. It's that one comment that you said. Why would I say that? And in terms of like it's influencing trauma, this is felt on the body as physical pain. It's triggered the fight or flight response. It's taken out the prefrontal cortex. We're in real danger now. And this becomes a very, very overwhelming, traumatic response for one comment that can last with us for the rest of our lives. We can remember that comment we said 20 years later. And that's rejection sensitive dysphoria. But unfortunately, it doesn't require any proof for this brain because we know that people don't like us and we know that that person has said something now and I know what they really think. And so we make all these stories in this horrific mind reading that we can't do, but we think we can. And so we're mind reading people and we're seeing, we can walk down the road and feel it. Oh, that person doesn't like me. I'm walking funny. They know. Or I look weird. They spotted I look weird. And it's all this commentary of rejection constantly. I think you can see that that is a major problem for divergent people because it's a huge thing to live with. Anyone listening to it for the first time will know that comment that, why would I say that? Or the comment that somebody said to us, the one that sticks forever.
What are like ways people can start responding differently to rejection or perceived criticism? Because, like you said, that's like all the way to youth, and it carries all the way forward.
Absolutely. It's something I'm really working on for myself as well. Um, how am I going to live with this thing differently? I think we can. And I think knowing that there's words for this, um, I kind of, this sounds terrible, but I kind of like other people have this because when you have something and you have no words for it, you think it might be just you. But then when you know that there's a huge amount of us, probably all with ADHD, the research is still being done, but we may all have this at different levels. Knowing that, understanding it differently, listening to the people talk about RSC, that helps. It really, really helps. And then when you know the exact system, knowing that when you're going into conversations, that this is there, and when you know it's there, and when it's a person and you're thinking what they're thinking, you can grab hold of that. I can grab hold of it in, I am feeling something that is real. It's a real experience, but is extraordinarily heightened. And I might not be able to mind read. We can't mind read, by the way. We can't do it. And actually, with this, we misread eye context, we misread tone, intention, how the person's standing. Knowing that that's a misreading going on. If somebody calls you a name, that's real. They've said it. And then you could deal with that one. If we're thinking what the person is thinking, that might not be real. And so knowing that this thing exists, along with little interventions like that, allows you to grab hold of the reality quicker and to recover better. But you have to do this with kindness. And you cannot be judgmental on yourself for having it or for feeling it, because it's a very real traumatic experience. And it's not in the population. This is a divergent experience. I've tried to explain it to people who don't have this, and they don't know what you're talking about. And for people who live with it, it's extraordinarily difficult to be in a group and to try and manage this and to deal with it and to hold yourself in a certain way to avoid all that rejection. So I think it's knowledge plus understanding, and please be kind with it, because this one needs kindness. It's hard to live with.
So let's talk burnout because burnout for us is totally different from everybody else. So, can you explain the difference? Why neurodivergents tend to feel burnout differently than everyone else?
Absolutely, and we've already tipped. Again, this is complicated and individual to us all. Um, Divergent people, as you know, we in massive amounts of similarities, and then totally unique. So for everyone listening, and they're thinking, they're trying to analyze their own burnout, it is a unique experience. But some of the things we've looked at, RSC will absolutely influence burnout. That's different. Um, Trauma, other people get trauma too. So trauma is influencing also. Masking is massively influencing burnout. And a thing called sensory processing. I hate the names for everything, but the medical name is disorder. So it's everything's disordered, as you know. We're all broken and disordered. They're terrible names. I like sensory processing differences. Um, it's a nicer landing, and it's a truer. Our sensory system works differently. The sensory system is hard to figure out because it's different to us all. Basically, anything that hits our eyeballs is felt. So instead of us automatically adjusting to lights, we can have responses to what lights do. So, like if somebody turned on a big light, for example, you could feel different, and that might be an anxious feeling. It's hard sometimes to figure out that you've become anxious by a light, or sound, or smell could make you angry, or something that goes into your mouth and you reject it immediately, or something touching your skin. That sensory processing differences with all those other bits leads to a totally different burnout. If you're in burnout, you're going to feel, you might feel like you really want to do something. You won't be able to do it. The body will feel sore, maybe heavy, different. Your sensory profile will also be different. It'll probably feel higher. Lights might be a bit too much, and sounds might be very overwhelming now. Um, and so burnout is it goes further than depression because it is a full body, full sensory experience. And when it hits, it can hit divergent people quite hard. And quite typically, burnout can lead to withdrawal from work, from sometimes relationships, from college. And then the person can, you can recover from burnout, by the way. You absolutely can. And if anyone feels like they're in it at the moment, there are lots of techniques you can use to get yourself through it and not feel. Basically, it's looking after ourselves and being kind. Imagine if we did that. Be kind, look after yourself. It sounds ridiculous, I know.
So what are early warning signs you wish people took more seriously before they hit that wall?
um, I like things. We're very good at learning from hindsight as divergent people, and we look back and go, "Oh God, I won't do that again."
Yeah.
I think the thing to watch for are actually quite complicated because a lot of times we don't fully feel what's going on inside our bodies, and we also fully at times don't understand um, what emotional state we're in. So, and they're both sensory profiles as well. So the things that, the hindsight, the learning from other people bit, if somebody is starting to withdraw socially, and we tend to be less social as we go at times anyway, but if you feel like the socializing is really more difficult, that's a sign. If you're becoming frequently more overwhelmed, if you're catastrophizing more, if the future looks a bit darker, if you find that you're more irritated, if you find that you're getting upset more, if you find that your food has changed, your water intake has changed, you're less active, um, is at the very beginning, there's a start of burnout. And if you learn in hindsight and you trace it back and you build a roadmap, you can then have a roadmap of what went first, for example. And for a lot of people, it is things like, I had a good food routine going and it's gone. Um, that could be a sign. And that could be a sign that you're heading for burnout. So I know that's quite a long, complicated answer, but it's a complicated one.
It's very complicated. So I know a lot of neurodivergent adults had therapy services that left them feeling blamed or misunderstood. What does neurodiversity affirming therapy relationship look like?
Um, I'm I'm at the unfortunate extreme level, which should be the norm. So when people come into the therapy room for me, it's a sensory room, and so they pick color, they pick movement, chair, couch, floor, beanbag. There's no rules. Music, and music can be anything. Huge amount of we all have a different need for either music or not. But in particular, um, the person learns to unmask. And so to do that, I have to unmask as a therapist. Now, if we think of all of that, that's where I can help people to get their nervous system into a place where they can fully trust another neurodivergent person and we can do real therapy. We get to the stuff really quickly then. But for most of us, we will have masked in therapy. And we may not have even known. Do you know this?
Yes, I've done it lots.
I'm glad you noticed. It took me a while to figure that one out. Was I masking therapy? It's quite obvious when you realize, yeah, I was. And so if we take the effect of something like RSD, we might not want to let the therapist down because the therapist might judge us that we're not doing well enough in therapy. So often we can pretend therapy is going well. I'm going to introduce a complication. And the reason why I'm putting this in is I want people to realize that they didn't fail in therapy, that therapy fails them. And the name for this, and the pronunciation might be awful over here with this Irish accent, but it's a Greek word and it's called alexithymia. And alexithymia translates to have no word for emotion. And so what this means that you can have your listeners, clients, going to therapists who struggle to understand and identify their own feelings. Now, if we can't fully, it's not that you're not feeling them, you are, it's in the understanding of what they are. And it gets quite complicated because this is associated with higher depression levels. Because it's, if you can't express yourself, it's very difficult then. And then we can internalize that emotion. But if you can't say it or feel it, and the therapist asks you a question like, how does it make you feel? That's a disastrous question. I don't know. I've got an exothymia. I can't feel this properly. And so for what I wish, therapy would be is in the understanding of things like that, and then going visual with emotions, taking away the need so for me, like, it's whatever the person wants to do, but we'll draw them, we'll name them different, color them. Body mapping is one thing where you can learn where all the emotions land and what they feel like inside the body. And with alexithymia, it's really complicated because how do you know that you're struggling with emotions when there is no word for this thing? It's has no words in explanation. So in a therapy room, that would be very complicated for a therapist to understand a divergent person. That's a, a failure in the system of the therapy world, not the client.
Now, if somebody's nervous about trying therapy again, which, a good 95% of them are,
Absolutely.
what questions could they ask a potential therapist to check if they really do understand ADHD and autism?
I've put a lot into this because I train therapists, so I'm trying to be really kind. Therapists are really highly trained. First of all, like, there's accrediting bodies all across the world. Make sure you're with somebody who is properly educated. It actually takes a really long time to become a proper therapist, and there's a huge amount of therapy that a therapist has to do, reflection on themselves. So the standards can be really high. Make sure you get somebody who's at least at that standard. Then what you'll notice is it's a lovely thing to be able to say now that neurodivergent friendly. It's
So that's the buzzword now.
everyone. It's just a click box. Yes, of course I am. You come in and there's a big light on. You sit under it.
Right.
And they're sitting right across from you. Um, I think therapy can work quite well, even if the therapist is not fully trained. And unfortunately, we are in a world where therapists are not going to be fully trained. So the first thing you could do is you can ask them if they've any formal training in divergence. Most of that will be like a postgrad or add-on type thing. So you can find out what they've done. If they are willing to explore, research, um, show a bit of interest in divergence. That can work really well, actually, because um, I'm not asking clients to lower the standards and your listeners to lower the standards to go back to therapy, but to go back to therapy, sometimes education is needed. And this, I know this sounds crazy, but sometimes clients do have to educate the therapist. But if the relationship is good, and the therapist is actively researching all these things and learning, that could work. The ideal gold standard, obviously, is try and find a neurodivergent therapist. If you can, if you can't, then try and find somebody who is making an effort. And if they're making an effort, it could be that they're trying to do courses. That might be enough because at least they're getting a baseline understanding. But obviously, if you can sit two divergent people together, it is the ideal.
So you speak about autism beyond stereotypes. What are the most unhelpful stereotypes you encounter, especially autistic adults?
Um, how bad do you want to go here? This is
This is adults with autism. They're ready. They're ready for this.
it's awful. So if you have autism has become something that's quite set on, as you know. The words being used, it's gone into playgrounds at this point uh, to mock people. and it's used in that way. And ADHD the same. When it comes to adults, um, like the awful stereotypes are of somebody who's like the ridiculous nature of this. I'm thinking of all the things that were said. Um, you don't have autism because you can look at me in the eyes. That was said in a therapy room, by the way. That was a real experience. Um,
That's what they told my son, and I was like, "Are you kidding?"
that goes to show you the total lack. If anyone hears that, by the way, and run, go to a different place. Just you don't close the door. Just keep going. Um, there's a look that people are looking for. Sometimes to get people to understand how we can internalize some of this world and how this affects our mental health, I'll open up my phone and I'll stick in the Google, and I'll type in autistic person and I'll show them images. And what I'm showing them is that society has built up an idea of what autism is. And if you don't look autistic, whatever that look is, then you're not going to be taken seriously as an autistic person. And the main stereotypes is the kind of the terrible language of a higher functionality, level one now. But like when you don't look autistic or you don't look like you've ADHD, then you're immediately shut down. It's you're no longer going to be able to with a person who doesn't see you're autistic and then you start explaining, forget it. Unless they're important in your life, forget it because they don't understand at all what autism is. And it's totally misunderstood, unfortunately, as something wrong with you. The stereotype, the biggest one, is that we are a problem. There is something wrong with us and we need to be fixed. That's, and I know that's awful stuff, but you guys know that that's what's out there. That's what's being said.
Okay, now we're gonna go to relationships. So, what are some recurring patterns you see between neurodivergent and non-neurodivergent partners or friends?
Communication is one of the big ones. Being on totally different pages and deciding that there's some with couples with communication, there's a huge amount of misunderstood patterns in communication. Um, there's lots of reasons for this. Like one of the theories behind it is things like theory of mind, the thought process and how you feel and how that doesn't match. But one of the main areas is a breakdown in communication because two people are totally misunderstanding what's actually going on. And some of the language is, like not knowing in a relationship that something like predictability is needed and that change can be a massive problem. And now you've got a partner who just says, "Oh, we're not doing that today. We're going to do something else." And then a total breakdown that day and then that being judged as behavior. I can't believe you're doing this. We're going there. I made a little change, and now you're behaving like this. That really rips a relationship apart, and that causes massive, massive misunderstandings in the communication. Knowing those little bits, by the way, and it it puts relationships back together. But I think the number one thing is misreading, even misreading tone. I can't believe you're shouting. I don't do couples therapy anymore. It was too much fighting going on. That's not therapy. But when like uh, when we're in a certain mode and a person's talking, we can misread, and so shouting sometimes is heard as shouting, and it might not be. Or if the language is not explicit and it's vague, we could put so much reason, as you know, the vague language. If it's said very explicitly, all of that, by the way, is communication difficulties. And I think the number one thing that I see with couples is you learn the new rules of how to communicate. And when you learn the new rules of how to communicate and you agree together these new rules, conflict stops and relationships can be saved on the basis of just a deeper understanding of the divergence. And also, if you've got two divergent people and you've got, I can't believe that you can't do this my way. It doesn't work that way. We are all very different. So be kind and understanding of all our differences, even in a relationship. Relationships, if anyone is struggling in a relationship out there, go back to the communication and go visual, um, predictable with communication.
Okay, so let's talk emotional regulation and self-esteem because even my son brought this question up to me. He's like, "How do I self-regulate myself as an adult?" And I'm like, "You gotta figure it out, dude."
You're on your own.
Pretty much.
How do you self regulate? So I'm doing it here. This is self regulation. So on the ADHD side, this is fidgeting. This is very simple, a marble in a mesh. I've got loads of them, but I keep losing them. So I use lots of different types. I've got the spinning rings and lots and lots of different ones. And the reason for this is regulation. So this is me regulating my nervous system. This is stimming on the autism side, and it's all the same stuff. Self-stimulatory behavior. If we've got nervous systems that are traumatized, and most of us hit that category very easily and beyond, uh, these nervous systems have to move. If you go still, you're in a mass position. That won't be good for your nervous system, and that will cause you dysregulation later on. If I mess with this thing with purpose, so I know what I'm doing with this. This is to regulate, and my brain knows this is regulation. This alone means that I'm moving, doesn't trigger the fight or flight response. I'm not getting anxious. And so I'm controlling emotion just by doing that self-stimulatory behavior. The headphones, not these ones, but noise cancelling headphones, bringing the sound down, keeping your eyes away from sunlight, wearing sunglasses. And one thing I really do like is sensory. And I've just dropped my fidget on the ground. I'll get that later. Sensory and nervous system resets. So you can do these all the time. For anyone in school or college or work, uh, this is where you take time during the day to either noise cancel or put on a nice bit of gentle music, get the eyes into a darker place, closed, or whatever way you want to do it. And this could be done walking or pacing back and forth or still, whatever your thing is, and resetting. The sensory system builds and it builds and it builds and it builds. And at the top, you will be completely dysregulated. If you actively go after regulation with a little time out, one of the big areas is if you're coming home from work and you're arriving into a house, 10 minutes even, I know sometimes that's impossible with houses, but 10 minutes of regulation for everybody so that anyone comes in, goes for a timeout. Adults and children, take time and regulate, breathe through the nose. Like, let the system settle. If you do that regularly, you're regulating as you go. And what you'll find if you do that and you do this regularly and properly, you'll find that you're not as overwhelmed at nighttime or dysregulated at nighttime. It works. So I'd encourage sensory and nervous system resets. Basically, just breathe, listen to nice music, and close the eyes. It works.
How can listeners like rebuild self-esteem that's been eroded by years of misunderstanding?
God, what a complicated question, isn't it? Uh, as you know, and all we do suffer badly with our self-esteem. It gets hammered along the way, and continuously does. I think if we think about divergence as something that is written on the DNA, it's a neurodevelopmental condition. So, as your brain develops, we get the slight change, and then throughout life, we've got an enormous amount of things that happen, and people tell us, "Do this, try this." I like to consider self-esteem as looking after myself. And what did the original DNA code say before everybody told me to stop fidgeting and stop running around the place? And so I try and go back to, like, what would I have liked when I was younger? That could be traumatic sometimes. So just be careful when you do that, please, because it can, you know, it could have gone better for a lot of people. Um, but if we are kind, and the kindness is the hard bit, and that's when I'm trying to override a lot of it by looking at genetics. So genetically, we were wired to do something. If we start behaving more and when we're adults and we get diagnosed, you can start to do that. Then the nervous system starts to settle. Basically, this is getting ice cream, going for nice mindful walks. Stop being unkind in your head to yourself. One of the biggest jumps you can do with your self esteem is if you're being aggressive or abusive inside your own head, nobody can say stop. And so we get away with an awful lot of here. That's the stuff we really have to stop. And we have to be kind, saying things like, there is nothing wrong with us. This is a societal external problem. And the more of that internal and be kind to myself type thinking you do, that actually rises your self esteem. And I think divergent people need to give themselves a good break anyway, because this is difficult. It's a hard brain to live with on the planet right now. So increased kindness, things like more ice cream, more looking after yourself. That works.
So, for somebody out there who's listening who might suspect they are ADHD, autistic combo, what would their very first step be?
Um, be careful. There's a lot of rubbish online and there's a lot of real stuff online. I think go to try and find neurodivergent people talking about neurodivergent things. That's a start. So make sure that it's coming from correct sources, and just be careful with. This is where a lot of people stop is in the search, because they will Google autism or the Google ADHD, and they might start hearing specific parts and, "Oh, well, I don't have that. I just have that bit." And, "Oh, no, that's not me." And actually, what we tend to do as divergent people is gather evidence to say we don't have it, not the other way around. And there's a lot of doubt with this thing. So you can start to doubt and then, well, it can't be ADHD then, it can't be autism. And we collect all the information to say we don't have it. You don't have to have all the bits. That's not how this thing works. And actually, there are very different variants and versions of autism and ADHD that won't look alike. So when you're going in, make sure you go on that unique search where you're just picking little bits along the way. You don't have to have it all. And some people have no psychological consequences if life has gone very well to being divergent, showing that it's a very much a societal thing. But just be careful with some of the like you might wander into places and people saying things like having a superpower. Fantastic if someone feels that way, but if you don't feel that way, that can be really disappointing, because then as a divergent person, I don't have one of these things that people keep saying. If you have, it's called a special interest. And if you don't have one yet, um, it can grow. You can find one. You can find one later on in life as well. Um, just on the journey, be kind. A question I do ask divergent people in therapy or people who are exploring is, do they feel different? And I've never had a person to say that, yes, I feel different and not go on to get diagnosed. Because when you talk to people without autism and ADHD and you ask them, do they feel different? They say no. They have a real sense that it's not autism and ADHD. Anyone that does starts to question. And so even if you're questioning, you might be on the right road, keep going. But you might not find fully your version. That does not mean you're not neurodivergent. It just means that you haven't found the exact part yet. So if anyone's thinking, keep going.
Okay, my final question for you is where can people find you if they want to learn more or share this episode with someone they know?
So my website is robertrackley.ie. So my second name is Rackley. Um, there I write a lot of stuff about all this stuff. So if they can come online and find me there.
Robert, thank you so much for coming onto my podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it.